Not the darkness in the
Darkness in the jungle. You heard.
the darkness in the jungle room.
The darkness in the jungle room.
Not the darkness in the jungle room.
You're damn right. The darkness in the jungle room.
Oh wow, that's gonna stick with me. That one's gonna stick with me. Okay, hang on, folks. We're just getting some stuff together here. As you heard me and Thomas in the background, apparently talking about the dark room. You should always get the dark room. I think that's going to be another podcast we're going to do. That gives me a wonderful idea.
What, coffee and rum?
Coffee and rum. Coffee and rum. Welcome to the Coffee and Rum. Now, you know what? Let me trademark that before somebody takes that idea and runs with it. That would be interesting, though. It really would be.
Was that a taser gun or was that a real gun?
What are you talking about?
I'm watching this thing that DL posted about old boy trying to rob an ice cream parlor, and a woman was sitting there. She worked at the ice cream parlor, so she's sitting there chilling. And then she sees old boy try to rob her. She walks behind the counter, goes to the office, and pulls out. I'm not sure if it's a gun or a taser gun, and starts popping it off.
We'll get back to it. But anyway, for everybody that's watching, let's go and get into it. Today's date is February 8th, 2020, and this is how the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, most Will Buchanan. On how the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before I do get started, this is an adult podcast, which means things of adult nature may be said and things of a graphic nature may be shown, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. As you probably heard in the background, I do have Thomas Reed, Mountain Punch, right behind me, enjoying the coffee and rum, which gives me an idea for another idea that I'm not going to say out loud because I don't want nobody to take it. So, with that being said, Thomas, you going to say hi to the folks while you sitting back here?
Well, folks.
As you're behind me because I'm massive. Hey. Oh.
Wow.
Pause. But aside from that, guys, let's just go ahead and get into it. There's no other way to start this day other than get to the bad news, so we might as well go and say it.
That Donald John Trump be, and he is hereby, acquitted of the charges in said articles.
Corrupting an election to keep oneself in office is perhaps the most abusive and destructive violation of one's oath of office that I can imagine.
I cannot vote to convict. The Constitution provides for impeachment, but does not demand it in all instances.
You cannot be on the side of this president and be on the side of truth. And if we are to survive as a nation, we must choose truth.
Whatever policy differences we may have, we should all agree this is precisely the kind of recklessness the Senate was created to stop.
This is a sad moment in the history of this body and in our nation, and I fear that it is emblematic, that it is a symptom of deeper challenges to this nation, challenges that are being exploited by our enemies abroad and by opportunists here at home.
If this shallow, hurried, and wholly partisan impeachment were to succeed, it would rip the country apart, pouring gasoline on the fire of cultural divisions that already exist.
I fear that moral courage, country before party, is a rare commodity these days. We can write about it and talk about it in speeches and in the media, but it is harder to put into action when political careers may be on the line.
Except when extraordinary circumstances require a different result, we should entrust to the people the most fundamental decision of a democracy, namely, who should lead their country.
The Senate, sitting as a court of impeachment, stands adjourned sine die.
Yes, we all saw it, and yes, there's no other way to put this. Somehow Dorito, which we knew was going to happen for a lot of us, because let's be honest, the Republicans were against the inquiry. They were against the impeachment. They stonewalled and backed up every which way of having a fair trial, which again was funny because, again, you got to remember, when the House came together and said we're going to do an inquiry into the president, oh, you can't do that because the president doesn't have a right to defend himself in an inquiry. For all those that don't know, you're not under any type of legality when someone's inquiring about you.
Bitch,
The House
grab Webster and find out what inquiry means, dumb son, bitch.
So the thing about it is just that with the House, yes, they did inquire about President Trump, and apparently half or more of all the Republican Party all cried foul. All cried foul. The simple fact of the matter is that, hey, this can't be done. He has no right to defend his accusers, which is kind of funny how they got court and inquiry somehow mixed together. Again, makes no sense. And of course, with the impeachment itself was literally easy to do because the House was voting to impeach. Again, Republicans were sitting there saying this is a sham and things of that nature, not realizing that the simple fact of the matter, Civics 101 would have sat there and told you that the House can vote to impeach, even though they can cry about they want to. The House is mostly Democratic controlled, as we know, as the Senate is mostly Republican controlled. So of course, anybody who's ever been paying attention to the news has sat there and saw that Moscow Turtle Mitch McConnell had sat there and said that we are going to be not impartial jurors, and that they already made their point known before the actual impeachment case took on trial. Which again, shouldn't be surprising that all the Republicans, except for one guy, and who knew it'd be Mitt Romney, of all people, Mitt Romney, Mr. Bain Capital, Mr. former presidential candidate, sat there and said, on account of my faith, I must convict. I'll give it to him. Now, of course, Donald Trump in high fashion is pretty much going to go after everybody against him because, as I said, he romanticized the idea of being a dictator and a king, and the Republicans have just now crowned him. So, with that also being said, well, there's just really no other way we can get to this, except for the simple fact of the matter is that that's not the only things that Trump did this week. Unfortunately, as in any Godfather movie, there's casualties.
That Alexander Vindman, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, was fired. Also, his twin brother, a JAG officer, a U.S. Army officer, a lawyer working at the National Security Council, was also removed.
That's right. Both of these brothers were abruptly fired today, and the White House, for now, is silent on this matter. All the White House will say at this point is that they don't comment on personnel issues, but it obviously raises the question, Wolf, whether or not the president himself ordered the firing of these two brothers in retaliation against Alexander Vindman for testifying during this impeachment inquiry. Obviously, this is not the first administration official to feel the heat from this White House. Of course, there's the former Ukrainian ambassador, Marie Yovanovitch, who was essentially forced out, according to House Democrats, because she was standing in the way of the president's scheme to exchange military assistance with the Ukrainians for dirt on former Vice President Joe Biden. And Wolf, obviously this is always also going to spark debate, raise the debate once again here in Washington as to whether or not the president has learned anything from this impeachment saga. Susan Collins is one Republican senator who was saying earlier this week that she believes the president learned a lesson in all of this. But perhaps the lesson that the president has learned, Wolf, after this entire impeachment saga is now over, is that he can get away with what he got away with, and that he can seek retaliation against people who were testifying against him during those hearings up on Capitol Hill. But we're waiting to find out.
Broad daylight.
And that's the truth. I hate to say it, but they said it best this point. Of course, like I said, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman and his brother, Colonel Vindman, if you remember, was one of the key people who were actually listening on the Ukraine call, and was one of the original whistleblowers that sat there and said that Trump is basically using Ukraine to get information on Joe Biden at the time. Which we're not surprised by at this point, that as of now, anybody who spoke against Trump is either resigning or quitting their jobs. It is shameful to say at this point that yes, with the Republican Party behind him, this tells you off the bat how powerful being in the Senate actually does. Because keep in mind of the three bodies, with the fact that the Senate in the Senate in its case, the Senate is like the literal vein of most politics. I mean, the House can pass all the bills they want, but if they're not passed to the Senate, it goes nowhere. Much like the 218 bills and counting still sitting on Turtle McConnell's desk that aren't his and will probably be gathering dust and will never hear the light of day. At the same time, we shouldn't be surprised now that Trump has been acquitted, which, again, for all those Trump supporters out there, acquitted doesn't mean he didn't do it. It just means that, they decided they didn't want to pursue it. That's what acquittal means. So, with that being said, Trump now is going after everybody who has spurned against him. We should not be surprised by this. Even the simple fact of the matter is just that, even more so, he is now getting, that's what I'm telling people, is like, he now has this feeling of being untouchable. And nobody's untouchable. Everybody gets touched every once in a while. Pause. But again, it makes no sense that as of right now, Republicans, even if you're paying for it,
he always pays for it.
But let's be honest about this. Another thing that has just honestly messed me up was that, of course, the two senators, of course, Lisa McConnell and Lisa Murkowski, one who's a Republican senator of Alaska, the other one is of Maine, kill me when they sit there and said, well, I think Trump has learned a lesson from all this. Yes, he has. Keep those loyal to you, and everybody else is going to snitch, get rid of them. That's what he's learned. And again, it makes no sense how in the world these people, I used to say, how do these people get voted in? Oh, right, because number one, some people didn't vote. Number two, the simple fact of the matter is that you have more racists that vote for than well-minded people. And at the same time, they tout to be the party of family values, but are they always the only ones getting caught with mistresses, other men, sexual crimes, mostly on Grindr, embezzlement, stealing? I think everything's short of murder. I think murder is the only thing they haven't covered yet. But again, yes. Party of family values. But but as crazy as that week has been so far, that's not the only thing. Here's the part that'll honestly make your stomach turn. And I mean turn.
Dramatic fashion. For the first time ever at a State of the Union address, a president awards the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Rush Limbaugh, thank you for your decades of tireless devotion to our country.
For some members of Congress, like Cedric Richmond, who've worked for years to bridge racial divides, the award of the nation's highest civilian honor to radio host Rush Limbaugh in their chamber was a gut punch.
This would just be one bad time in America's history where we placated and pandered to racists and dividers.
For decades, Limbaugh's been accused of overt race baiting, of appealing to the worst of Americans' prejudices, often directing his most incendiary remarks toward African Americans.
The NFL all too often looks like a game between the Bloods and the Crips without any weapons.
President Obama was a frequent target, Limbaugh playing a provocative song on his show.
Barack, the magic Negro.
And Limbaugh was one of the early proponents of one of the most infamous false attacks on Obama, which was heavily promoted by Donald Trump.
Rush Limbaugh was at the center, or at least was a contributor, to the conspiracy theories about President Obama. The specious and harmful argument that President Obama had not been born in the United States and therefore was an illegitimate president.
And what riles Congressman Richmond is the company Rush Limbaugh now keeps.
When you think about the people who have received this award, it is people who bring people together, who fight for a cause of unity and justice. And then we just give it to somebody who has stoked and is a blatant racist.
Limbaugh now shares a Medal of Freedom with civil rights icons Martin Luther King Jr., Muhammad Ali, Jackie Robinson, and Rosa Parks, who President Clinton recognized after bestowing the award on her at a State of the Union address in the middle of his impeachment. Limbaugh also drew criticism for comments about women, including his remark about a female Georgetown University student who campaigned for access to birth control.
What does that make her? It makes her a slut, right? Makes her a prostitute. She wants to be paid to have sex.
Limbaugh later apologized. President Trump does have the prerogative to give the Medal of Freedom to whoever he chooses, and plenty of other recipients have been controversial. It should also be noted that Rush Limbaugh has an enormous following and just revealed he has late-stage lung cancer. But historian Tim Naftali believes at this moment, in this political climate,
I think the president has tarnished the award by giving it to a very divisive figure in a reality show moment in the State of the Union at a time when this country desperately needs healing.
If you saw that, of course, shouldn't really be surprised because it's Rush Limbaugh. Anybody who knows Rush Limbaugh, who's heard enough of Rush Limbaugh, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. We shouldn't be surprised that one racist basically awarded another racist probably one of the most prestigious honors that you can give in this country. You know, Rush Limbaugh, you know, who also sat there and said Obama and Oprah were successful because they're black. You know, Rush Limbaugh also sat there and said the NAACP should actually learn how to basically wear hoodies and guns and go commit robberies. Rush Limbaugh also said that low-income families can only be low income when they stop having too many children. And he's got a treasure trove of other things he has said, especially directed toward women, where, of course, that was the more famous one. If she wants birth control, she must be a slut, right? Again, he now has the Medal of Freedom. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. I don't feel bad the motherfucker's got cancer. Call it karma, call it a cosmic act of balance, call it whatever you will. I don't feel bad the motherfucker got it. Because it couldn't have happened to a better person. Thoughts and prayers. But again, it amazes me so that people are sitting there saying, oh, well, this shouldn't have happened. It's going to cause racial divides. That's what racists do. Racists, xenophobes, homophobic, basically anybody who just can't see to see another motherfucker happy. They will cause these divides. They think like just like religious people who think religious freedoms are being attacked. They think the simple fact of the matter is they believe what they're saying is right, what there is just. And let's be honest. Trump and Limbaugh are literally two things of the same cloth. They're two old white guys that will say whatever they want and think they cannot be touched. That seems to be the ongoing theme here. Hey, Alex, what'd you say? I wouldn't wish cancer on anyone, but I bet cancer is ashamed of itself for having Rush Limbaugh.
I don't disagree.
We don't disagree with that at all, Alex. But another thing that happened during the State of the Union, which a lot of people are calling about, and they're actually mad at Nancy Pelosi for this. I, for one, am not.
And God bless America. Thank you very much. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much.
Yep, folks, you saw it. You saw Nancy Pelosi literally rip apart the State of the Union address, because every president has to give their State of the Union address to the Speaker of the House and to the Vice President for them to follow. And you saw what Nancy Pelosi did at the end of it. Much like anybody else that gets a bill that you don't want, you rip it up in half. And for the funny part is, all Republicans and some people lost their ever-loving minds. Oh, how dare Nancy Pelosi? How dare her rip up that wonderful speech our president did, not realizing that our president literally spoke bullshit for 2 hours. There was nothing true about what he said the entire time. But yet, for some odd reason, Everybody wants to step on the fact of what Pelosi did. Oh, that's never happened before. A Speaker of the House has never ripped up a president's speech. Yes, but a Speaker of the House actually sat down when a president was making sense. I'm talking about you, John Boehner. You know, when you had a black president that was actually trying to help the country and you couldn't sit and you couldn't stand up and clap, you know, for reasons of you being a tan racist. Just saying. But again, they harped on Nancy Pelosi. They harped on her because she sat there and said it's a sham. The whole speech was bullshit. And I don't blame her because that's what they say. Oh, well, you're just mad because Dorito didn't shake your hand. Traditionally, when you walk up to the House and he's supposed to shake your hand, the vice president's hand, and you had your hand out, and he kind of just jeered away and, boo this, and then that was the end of it. So we really should be surprised. I personally think what Nancy Pelosi did was great. I personally think that what she just did pretty much just showed us how sick we are of Dorito. And for all those that are watching for the news, for all those watching for the new people, thank you for watching. What I mean by Dorito, because I refuse to call him president, so he looks like basically like a white finger that's been wrapped up in cheese Doritos and rug lint and urine. That's why I call him Dorito, for anybody that wants to know. So, but again, with Dorito, we should not be surprised about the simple fact of the matter that he, at this point, thinks he's won. He's taking his victory lap. He really is. He is taking his victory lap. He's beaten the impeachment. He's made the Democrats, he thinks in his mind he's made the Democrats look terrible. He's already ready to see about going more than 2 terms, because he said that. He won't see if he can be president. Because like I said, he doesn't want to be president, folks. He wants to be a king. Unfortunately, royalty only exists in very select countries. Not this one. But again, that's what he's trying to do. We really shouldn't be surprised by that, aside from the fact that it has so far been a colossal fuck-up. Now, speaking of that, colossal fuck-ups, let's talk about Iowa and their Democratic caucus, which, as of this point, information is slowly trickling out from there. They're not actually going to give the full results of it. But the excuse they tried to give us about what happened was kind of bullshit.
A little bit about what happened last night. The reporting of the results and circumstances surrounding the 2020 Iowa Democratic Party caucuses were unacceptable. As chair of the party, I apologize deeply for this. Last night, we were faced with multiple reporting challenges and decided, out of an abundance of caution, to protect the integrity of the Iowa caucuses and their results by taking the necessary steps to review and confirm the data. A thorough, transparent, and independent examination of what occurred yesterday will follow. But let me be clear. My number one priority has been on ensuring the accuracy and integrity of the results. And we have been working all night to be in the best position to report results. And here, in just a couple of minutes, we will be reporting 62% of precincts from all 99 counties. The bottom line is that we hit a stumbling block on the back end of the reporting of the data. But the one thing I want you to know, we know this data is accurate. And we also have a paper trail and documentation that have been able to use to provide information to help verify the results. This is personal to me. I'm a lifelong Iowan. I have caucused for 20 years.
And we're going to stop right there because it basically goes into some bullshit of how he's from there and how he wants the whole idea to be made and things of that nature. Really things you don't want to hear about. What I'm basically pointing out is he just seriously said a lot of shit to cover up with the simple fact of the matter is that, yes, we had a colossal fuck up in the Iowa caucuses. Yes, we're only going to report this time 62%. And yes, we're not going to tell you what happened because we don't want you to lose faith in us. That's exactly what happened. Of course, at this point, the full results from that caucus have yet to be released. At this point, only 70% has reported in, and I think that it had Buttigieg ahead by about 27, and I think Sanders behind him was 25, and of course, everybody followed after that. But again, this goes into my whole entire explanation of these caucuses, because right now they're in New Hampshire for the primaries, and this is why I have been saying the Electoral College needs to be disbanded. Because for the simple fact of the matter is, the Iowa caucus, South Carolina, New Hampshire, these entire regulations only lead to the simple fact and actually dismay people from voting, because a lot of people believe their vote doesn't count. I, for one, cannot blame them if you think about it. For all those that know how voting in Electoral College works, basically it works like this. Every state is given an amount of electoral votes. The electoral votes are basically provided by Electoral College. A president needs 270 electoral votes to secure the presidency. So, if you look at the map, and you'll see that more states, kind of like Georgia, California, New York, Ohio, Michigan, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, those kind of states have a shitload of votes. So if I was president and I'm trying to run for presidency and I need 270, it would make sense to go after all the votes you can, especially from the states that have the most delegate votes. This is the problem, because when people see that, they immediately think and be dismayed that my vote doesn't count, considering the fact that the majority of votes basically tells the elector, or the person for said state, tells the Electoral College where to put the electoral votes for. So they go by majority, most of them. Some of them even go by the good faith principle, which means that if an elector sees that a state is voting the wrong way, they can override said state and actually put the vote to what they believe is right. Kind of fucked up, isn't it? Although not all states do it, but it's kind of fucked up that it's there. So you can see why a lot of people are dismayed from voting, because everybody else, almost every other country aside from 8 other countries besides us, have actually adopted the popular vote, which we still take. And a lot of people sit there and say, well, we can't do the popular vote because that means that, of course, the age-old argument, by the way, they sit there and say, well, we can't do the popular vote because if we do that, that means that if someone wants to get California, they would win the presidency. I spoke about this on a previous podcast. California's population is a little over 15 million from the 2019 census. So having 19 million people vote, having a little over 15 million people vote doesn't mean you win the presidency when you still have 49 other states that could outdo that population. It's an age-old argument that honestly still makes the rounds, kind of like trickle-down economics. It makes no sense, but again, it still makes the rounds. But I guess in this case, I have always sat there and said the Electoral College needs to be disbanded and we need to go by the popular vote, because that actually reflects everything and would encourage people to come forward, because even then your vote counts. That's how it should be. I believe you can, and I approve this message. But that did feel like a political statement. It did feel like a political statement, didn't it? But we're moving right along, guys. Let's be honest about this one. We knew this was coming. If you have somebody that's on Medicare right now, you should be very worried, as Dorito has already sat there and said he is going to look into cutting Medicare and other entitlement programs. For everybody that doesn't remember from 2016, it was a campaign promise that he would not touch Medicare, and yet he is willing to do that, along with Social Security. You really shouldn't be surprised by this, because let's also be honest, the Republicans for years. Anybody remembers Eddie Munster? Remember Eddie Munster? Anybody remembers Representative Ryan? Remember how Ryan so bad, he wanted to take Medicare. He wanted it so bad you thought he took a Viagra pill before the date. That's about the best way I could put that. And he wanted to take Medicare, and he wanted to cut it up, because you got to remember, a lot of Republicans wanted to take Medicare and do it into a block grant program, which is a terrible, terrible idea. Because the simple fact of the matter is, block grant programs means they can be run by the state, which again, that's the Republicans' thing. Less government overreach, more of the state. And that's the problem, because you don't want the states deciding on their own what they can do with the Medicare block grant fund. Especially for the simple fact of the matter is, a lot of baby boomers are now depending on Medicare. And trust me, you don't want that affected. Because again, how is this not a warning bell for all those people out there that yes, Trump will cut this, he'll cut everything else, but they won't cut the military, which, by the way, their budget just got increased. Shouldn't be surprised about that. And of course, Social Security, which again is another big block of voters, you should be concerned as well. So, but the simple fact of the matter is, you should be concerned all around. Now, whoever won't be concerned, that's going to be interesting as shit. But moving right along, guys, there is another story that's come up because, like I said, with the impeachment investigation that has passed, William Barr has done something more Godfather-ish than Dorito himself. He has basically put another brick in the wall.
Hey, today of all days. Today, the day the president was left in office by the Senate after the House impeached him for trying to get a foreign country to interfere in the next election, today of all days, Attorney General Bill Barr sent out this letter to all U.S. attorneys telling them that as of today, they may not open any investigation into a presidential candidate, a presidential campaign, or a presidential campaign staff member or advisor without express written permission from him, from Bill Barr personally. Now, there is a longstanding policy of there being heightened scrutiny at the Department of Justice for investigations that could have an effect on forthcoming elections. I could give you a chapter and verse on it after what we all went through in 2016. But this advice that was distributed by Attorney General William Barr today, as far as we know, this is a little different. As far as we can tell, and we have taken some advice on this evening, this appears to be the first time ever that an attorney general has established this new rule that he and only he, the attorney general personally, must approve or disapprove any investigation into any presidential candidate or campaign from this day henceforth until the election takes place. President Trump's defense to his impeachment.
Yeah, that should be fucking scary.
Her disgust before she went into that next topic, though, that was all over her face.
Yes, because when you just sat there and read, I, William Barr, the president's personal attorney, and your attorney general have now just sat there and told you that any investigation into any presidential candidate or campaign or staff or presidential advisor will now have to be approved by me. You know, the president's personal attorney and your attorney general. But again, we shouldn't be surprised for a guy that was supposed to be brought in for Jeff Sessions, who was just as twisted as fucked up as the other guy, is actually worse. What's the effect of the matter? It's just like, how in the world can we sit there and allow this to happen? And it's like, but again, that's the problem with the AG. The AG can only be released by the president. Unfortunately, the people do not have a say in that. Neither does the House of Representatives. Only the president can replace the IG. So I'm sorry, the AG. I said IG. Replace. I was like I just compared William Barr to Instagram. Ooh, sorry, early morning. But again, with William Barr being the AG and apparently now being the gatekeeper, this just tells you how corrupt the administration truly is from top to bottom. And so, again, for any investigations moving forward, it is going to make it very difficult to get any type of convictions. And this is why I said about William Barr, because I said this from his initial jump. If you're going to be the president's personal attorney, so be it. Don't do it from the AG office. But also, speaking of things that don't make any sense, guys, of course, this Friday we did have our presidential Democratic debate. And for one part, they did kind of harp on something that I thought was interesting, but at the same time, they kind of bait away from it. Black people.
They'll go to the polls to vote. Black voters make up about 60% of the electorate there. Senator Sanders, several weeks ago, Nina Turner, one of your national co-chairs, published an op-ed piece that said Vice President Biden has, quote, repeatedly betrayed black voters to side with Republican lawmakers and undermine our progress. Senator Sanders, do you agree with her, one of your most visible surrogates, that Vice President Biden has repeatedly betrayed black voters?
Well, I think what Senator Turner was talking about are some of the early actions of Vice President Biden. But no, Joe Biden is a friend of mine, and I'm not here to attack him. But what I would say is that what we need in terms of the African American community is to understand that we have got to start investing big time in education, in healthcare. There is no excuse why white families in America have 10 times more wealth than black families. No excuse that disproportionately African Americans are in jail compared to whites. No excuse for black women dying in childbirth 3 times the rate that white women are doing as well.
Senator Klobuchar. You had raised your hand before.
Yes, I did, because I think in addition to the economic argument we're making here with the sad stories of a woman walking into a maternity room in New Orleans and saying her hands are swollen and walking out without her baby, and 30% of African American kids living in poverty. We know that there are economic solutions here to invest in those communities, housing, childcare. But there's something else insidious going on that we haven't addressed, and that is the systematic racism when it comes to voting. That is moves across the country to limit people's right to vote. And that is why I have been leading on these bills to automatically register every kid to vote in this country when they turn 18. There is no reason that we can't do that across this country. To stop the gerrymandering by setting up independent commissions in every single state. And yes, to stop the voting purges. Because what is going on right now, in the words of one North Carolina court, is that they are discriminating with surgical precision against African American voters. And we are not going to be able to get any of these things done if we don't give people the right to vote.
Vice President Biden and then Senator Warren.
I beg your pardon?
I just wanted to give you a chance to respond.
Yes, I agree completely. There should be registration, automatic registration, turning 18. You get a driver's license, whatever you do, you automatically are registered, number one. Number two, with regard to what we're going to see in South Carolina, we're all going to be there pretty soon. We'll see whether or not it works. The response to the letter that the person, I'm not saying Bernie wrote the letter, but the senator wrote the letter, was very brisk and significant with other African Americans in South Carolina taking issue with her. But look, Amy is right. The senator is correct. That is that we, in fact, there is systematic racism. And that's why our Justice Department works so hard to go after those. You know, realize there are 35 states in the United States of America that have come up with a total of 78 laws to restrict voting just in the last 5 years to try to keep African Americans from voting, and brown as well, black and brown people from voting. And that will be an enormous priority in my administration, as it was in ours. It's just wrong, simply wrong.
Senator Warren.
You know, I'm glad to stand on this stage with my fellow Democrats who talk about how important the black community is, at least at election time. Year after year after year, election after election after election, Democrats go to people in the black community and say, boy, we really care about these issues. Racism is terrible. We all want to do something. And then somehow the problem just seems to keep getting worse. Well, I think it's time we have real concrete plans that are going to make a difference in people's lives. I proposed a 2-cent wealth tax. And let me tell you just one of the things we can do with a 2-cent wealth tax. We can cancel student loan debt for 43 million Americans. And because African Americans have to borrow more money to go to college, borrow more money while they're in college and have a harder time paying it back when they get out, that one law is going to help close the black-white wealth gap for people with student loans by about 20 points. We aren't making a difference in America. We're saying to the rich folks, you keep your money, and the rest of us will talk about racism, but not really do anything. I think the time for that is over. I'm ready to get in this fight and really make a change.
George.
Okay, thank you. Actually, let's keep this debate going. Go ahead, Mr. Steyer.
Look, out of narrative comes policy. And we're talking about a lot of policies that affect Americans broadly and disproportionately affect black Americans or brown Americans. But what I believe is we should set up a commission on race and deal with race explicitly. Because everyone's saying we can't have rules that are different for different people. But in fact, we're here because we had rules that are different for different people. I would set up a formal commission on race on day one to retell the story of the last 400 years in America of systematic racism against African Americans, not just legal discrimination, injustice, and cruelty, but also the contribution that the African American community has made to America in building it and in leading the entire country from a moral standpoint for generations and centuries. Because I believe out of narrative comes policy. We need to repair damage that's been done officially, and pretending we're all the same is not accurate. We got here a certain way. Let's talk about Jim Crow. Let's talk about Martin Luther King. Let's talk about Barbara Lee, the congresswoman from Oakland, who's one of our great leaders, and then let's figure out how to repair the damage so we can move forward together.
Mr. Yang, take on that argument and also what he said about reparations.
The median African-American household net worth is projected to be 0 by 2053. Things are not getting better for people of color. If anything, they're getting worse because we're in the process of eliminating the most common jobs in our economy. It's something of an economic unnatural disaster, and who suffers most in a natural disaster? People of color, people with lower levels of capital and access to opportunity and education. And while I know we love to champion education here as Democrats, only 33% of Americans are going to attend college. Lower percentage of African Americans. There is no way we can prevent this tsunami from wiping out African American net worth unless we put straight cash into their hands sometime between now and 2053. And it's not just them. It is truck drivers, it is retail clerks, it is call center workers, it is accountants, it is bookkeepers. We are in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in the history of our country, and it's going to hit black people the hardest. We have to stop nibbling at the edges and actually start solving the real problem.
All right, so we know that was a long take, so we're just gonna go into it. I'm gonna be honest, just from a black person standpoint, because you know I'm black. It was a lot of talking. It was a lot of talking that was done in the Democratic debate, especially with black people, because let's be honest, Elizabeth Warren kind of said it best. It's amazing how Democrats all of a sudden care about black people, especially around election time. So I just thought that was a slick say. I was like, yeah, you kind of have a point. But what the more interesting thing about it was that when we talk about reparations and actually paying people, because let's be honest, we're the only group in America that has yet to be financially taken care of. Almost every other group out there has been taken care of. If you can actually Google out there and see the list of payments the U.S. has actually made to Native Americans, Aborigines, Samoans, things of that nature, you'll notice that black people really aren't on there. And of course, the argument always is, who do we know who is black? Who do we know who are actually ancestors of slavery? And every other thing they like to say is just as much as bullshit. But also what I found interesting was that, of course, with politicians on a debate, they do like to plug their own plans. But what I didn't really hear was, oh, we're going to get a study done. Oh, we're going to look into this. Oh, we're going to talk, we're not going to say the R word. We're not going to say reparations. Oh, no, we're not going to say that. Give money back to black people for 400 years of slavery? That sounds almost absurd. Yeah. So, I'm going to be honest, like I've said before, I don't really see myself as a Democrat. I certainly don't see myself as a Republican. But from the lesser of two evils, it just, I was expecting a lot more. I mean, I was expecting, instead of hearing coalitions and studies and things of that nature, I actually wanted to hear what they would actually do. And I think to myself, and not to get too deep into this because there's a whole other podcast I can do that on, let's be honest, there's a lot of people out there who would rather see one ethnic group suffer if it makes them better, or could care less if it's not them. So really cannot be surprised at this point that I didn't hear a lot of Democrats saying, as far as plans set forth, aside from saying, oh, we're gonna talk about this, because race has been talked about. Racism has been talked about. The problem is, what is actually going to be done about it? That's the question. But it was just interesting to hear for almost 8 minutes to see what they would say and do, and yet here we are.
I think racism has been more mentioned than talked about. It's been mentioned in countless elections,
right?
Because they do need the black vote to actually get somebody in office, regardless of what they say.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to the actual discussion of it, because it comes with a certain level of guilt for a lot of white people. It's always mentioned, and then it's like, if you ever notice that anybody ever gets into office who said that they were going to say something about it, it's never brought up again.
True.
It's kind of like the fucking, it's like, serious?
It's almost like
okay, so while this was happening, you just need to make sure you got that vote. You got that vote. And then it's like, oh, we'll get to it as soon as possible. Well, first we got to focus on this. Then you're going to focus on this.
Right.
And then it's like, all right, so once everything gets more stable, we'll be able to go ahead and touch base on it. Then some tragedy is going to happen. It's like, oh, well, we definitely don't got time for it now. And it's like, so, wait, your term is up. So when did we... Oh, yeah, the next election is coming up. Let's mention that again. It's like, eat a dick.
Pretty much. And speaking of things that need to eat dicks, you ever want... Wait. Pause. That was a terrible ass segue. That was a terrible segue.
He didn't even... That wasn't even like something that was taken out of context. No. And speaking of something that needs to eat dick, it's like...
I'm sorry. That was a terrible, terrible segue. Terrible segue. What I meant to say was that something that's really terrible, not in the eat dicks terrible, but something that's really terrible is, like, we hear about the job markets. We really do. But why isn't your pay increasing? Well, there's a funny thing about that.
Paychecks getting fatter in such a hot job market. It's one of the biggest mysteries in today's economy. Basic rules of supply and demand tell us employers should be paying more as they chase after workers. But wage growth has been pretty flat for most Americans. At the end of 2019, average hourly wage growth even dipped below 3% for the first time in a year and a half. Compare that to the last big economic expansion in the 2000s, when wage growth peaked at more than 4% until the Great Recession. So why aren't wages growing faster? Well, some economists think there's hidden slack in the labor market, meaning it's not as tight as it looks on paper. Maybe because some people have dropped out of the labor force entirely, and these so-called discouraged workers aren't captured in the official unemployment rate. Other economists argue that given the current low productivity growth, low inflation environment, it's not really surprising that wages haven't grown more. Still, others say workers have lost bargaining power and employers are the ones in a position of strength. This stagnant wage growth is happening despite signs the job market is really competitive. For example, people are quitting their jobs a lot. Now that suggests workers are confident they can get another one. In 2019, the so-called quit rate reached the highest level in nearly 2 decades. And job switching does tend to boost paychecks. One Yale labor economist finds workers average a 4% pay gain every time they change a job. But that hasn't shown up yet in the overall numbers. Where has there been wage growth? It's actually fastest at the bottom of the pay scale. It's partly because the low-wage job market is even tighter. But it's also because states and cities have been raising their minimum wages. So is the overall lack of wage inflation a permanent structural change? No one knows for sure, but it's a question economists are all trying to answer.
So let's be honest here from that. What I gather from that is what I've been saying from Jump Street. The simple fact of the matter is, right now they say the market is great, and it is for low-paying jobs. You can sit there and say that as of this following month, we've added 200,000 jobs, 200,000 plus jobs. That might be great, that might be wonderful and everything else, but for the simple fact of the matter is they're all low-paying jobs. So, on paper, it looks great, but we basically just fluffed the job market. Because let's say somebody, say for instance in my home state of Tennessee, someone opened up 50 McDonald's franchises across the state, which means that that itself could equal up to 10,000 jobs. Okay, great, 10,000 jobs, but all those 10,000 jobs probably pay $10 or less. On paper, it looks great. 10,000 jobs got added, but from a employee wage profile, it sucks. And that is the current state of where our economy is, unless you're in the private sector or you're above the 100K line. For the simple fact of the matter is, if you work a job that is below minimum wage, which is still $7.25 since 2009. 11 years ago, we're still at $7.25. Why we are not, based on inflation rates, not at $15 an hour by now is mystifying to me. Except the simple fact of the matter is, let's get down to brass tacks. There are some employers out there who will lowball you, but realize that because of the job market, it's an employer's market. It's not an employee's market. Not unless you're in very high demand skill specific areas. So they already know that you're going to have a harder time finding a job somewhere else if you quit. So what does that mean? That means that they can control it. If you control the market, you control the prices. And if they have no choice, because let's be honest, we all need a job to keep the lights on, the roof over our heads, and not be out on the street. They know it, and we know it, and unfortunately, they have the upper hand in that. And only because we stopped doing unions, we busted up unions, we stopped collective bargaining agreements, all the things that actually guaranteed us a decent paying wage, 40-hour work week, paid time off, maternity leave, although that's still contested. But all those things came from CBAs and labor unions. So that's why I never knocked them, because let's be honest, they are so vital to have. Because you know why? Because if you have it Doritos way, you'll have it like Foxconn. And we all know how that went.
Heralded as a great deal.
This is the 8th wonder of the world.
2 years ago, President Trump announced a massive new plant for Foxconn, the Taiwanese electronics manufacturer, breaking ground in Mount Pleasant, Wisconsin last year.
And this is just the beginning.
The plan? Build a $10 billion manufacturing hub to make LCD TV screens, creating 13,000 blue-collar jobs. In return, Foxconn secured more than $4 billion in tax breaks from the state.
Originally, it was very exciting. Right? The idea of so many jobs, of something that was technology-based, seemed very exciting. But it was when we started to learn the details of how much this was going to cost, when it was announced that the whole project was possibly going to cost the people of Wisconsin $4.5 billion, people kind of slowed down to take a look at, is this really going to be worth it?
Community activist Kelly Gallagher has been tracking Foxconn since day one. To make the plant possible, Mount Pleasant has ended up borrowing money to buy up land.
Mount Pleasant is on track to spend close to $900 million in land acquisition and infrastructure. That's 38 times our annual budget.
The town's credit rating has been downgraded because of that. Foxconn has also changed the scale of the project, telling Reuters it's too expensive to make TV screens in the U.S.
When Foxconn started to say it's going to be a smaller plant, we're not going to make big screen TVs. Then they said it was going to be a technology hub, and then they said it was going to be an AI institute, and then it was going to be nothing, and then it was going to be a smaller manufacturing plant again. By the time they went through the 4th iteration, I think people just threw up their hands and said, we don't know what they're going to make, and whatever they say it is today, we can't trust that it is going to be what they have promised. It already is not what they promised.
Does that mean that what President Trump has promised is not going to get delivered here?
Oh, well, we know it's not going to be delivered here by Foxconn's words alone. President Trump described it as the 8th wonder of the world. It's going to be a wonder, but the wonder is, what are they going to make?
This is Prairie View Drive, and this road here used to lead into an entire neighborhood of houses. But Foxconn's building, they've been cleared out, and those residents are now asking, was it worth it? Kim Mahoney is one of them. She built her custom home in this subdivision with a dozen neighbors.
We did. We picked out every element and built this so that we could stay here forever. We intentionally built a ranch that didn't have a lot of stairs so that when we grew old, we wouldn't have any problems getting through the, up and down the stairs. And we really intended to stay here the rest of our lives.
Now, Mahoney's is the last house standing. Her neighbors took offers from the village government to move out and raise their homes. She says she received a lowball appraisal, so she stood her ground.
I think this whole project was a scam. I don't trust anything our president says. He is not looking out for the residents of Mount Pleasant. He's looking out for himself.
NBC News requested interviews with Foxconn and the village of Mount Pleasant. Both declined. In a statement, Foxconn says it's pouring a concrete foundation and is thrilled to be moving into the next stages of construction. The company says it looks forward to beginning production in late 2020. The local government tells us they remain optimistic, and the deal includes strong taxpayer protections.
Have residents been taken for a ride here?
There's a real fear that we have been taken for a ride. And I think that it's really legitimate because they already are not building what they said that they were going to make in the contract with the state and with the village. Our only hope is that they build something. It's starting to look as if nothing is going to be there at all. And that is just overwhelmingly disappointing.
If you had a minute to tell President Trump what you think about this or ask him to do something about it, what would you ask the president to do?
I think if I had a minute to speak with President Trump, I think I would tell him what happened to us as a community, what this project means to us and to the residents here. And I think I would ask him how he ever believed that this was going to work. And I think I would want to know if he really read the contract, if he really understood how much this was going to cost the people of Wisconsin and the people of Mount Pleasant.
And my answer to her would be no, he didn't read anything because he was born to lead, not to read. So again, I point that out because Foxconn is honestly an example of what you could look forward to when you take away unions, when you take away collective bargaining agreements, when you pretty much let businessmen, failed businessmen that is, try to do things that they think they're going to work but only benefits one side, not everybody else. So what actually happened in Mount Pleasant in that small town can honestly happen anywhere in the U.S. So just saying, you know, low paychecks, no unions, no collective bargaining agreements, and pretty much Doritos untouchable. Yeah, it's a fucked up week. But that's all the stories that we have, guys. We're just going to get to our feel-good news segment because I think we kind of need it. We always try doing How the Frack We Got Here with every time. I know we do a lot of stories about doom and gloom and things of that nature. But it's the weekend. We try to keep you guys, leave you guys on a good note, trying to leave you on a positive note, things of that nature. And a couple of stories I found here I thought was pretty cool. One, it kind of gives me hope as a future parent if I ever become one. And if I ever have a daughter, I'm probably going to need to learn this skill for all those who are fathers out there that do have daughters.
Maybe have me together. Let me check you out. Let me see you. Okay, let me see. Not yet, not yet? No. I ain't got it yet? Alright, sit back down. Let me try again.
So one way dads are trying to stay involved in their kids' lives, doing their daughter's hair. This is actually my barbershop here at 30 Rock. But dads aren't just taking their sons to the barbershop anymore. No. Dads are actually doing their daughter's hair as a way to form a lasting relationship as they braid.
I'm Frank Whitfield, and we have 3 beautiful daughters, Octavia, Sophia, and Eliza.
My name is Ricardo Benson. My daughter is Colby Benson.
Outside Cleveland, Ohio, 2 dads are tackling the tresses of their daughters, or at least trying to.
Oh, tired. I'm tired. On my back. I recently made a huge decision to resign from my job, so I'm around a lot more, the house, and I want to be able to chip in and help out with the kids with their hair. I came into Octavia's life when she was 8 years old, so I went from single to married with a daughter. Immediately I had to learn how to figure out how to do her hair when we wanted to go out somewhere. And Sophia, she doesn't let me do her hair yet because she doesn't feel like I'm good enough yet. And Eliza, she doesn't know any better, so I get a chance to do her hair quite often. I'm gonna keep that out there. I'll brush you together right here. You all right?
Yeah.
We all find our unique things that we do together. And so even when they're doing each other's hair, I'm sitting amongst them talking to them. So, hair is a big part of this house, and a lot of households, hair is a key part of it. So we get that bonding opportunity often, whether I'm doing the hair or not. We often get a chance to bond around it.
My daughter is my world. Everything I do is for her.
The combing, the brushing, it's not about looks, but about time together.
When we do her hair, we do it at night. We sit on the couch, we watch a movie, she'll read a book, and it's just time for us to really just sit down and talk about how her day was going. It's a bond for sure. I want my daughter to understand that she can talk to me about anything. And, sometimes that's when I get things that I don't hear about her day. She's more relaxed at that time, and she opens up a little bit more.
It hurt?
Okay. Her hair is so curly, it's kind of hard to do sometimes.
What could I do better? Braids? The twist?
Just the side pony.
But at the same time, I want to be able to provide that for my daughter as well. I just hope that I can continue to put that smile on my daughter's face after I do her hair and her really like it. And me not be like, Daddy messed up on this one. Let's start over.
That's where Taya Riggins comes in. She owns Naturally Me Studios and holds quarterly workshops teaching Frank, Ricardo, and others how to perfect their ponytails.
I actually deal with a lot of male clientele. They'll come to me and they say, hey, T, can you help me with my daughter's hair? And because I have a passion for hair and a passion for teaching, I thought that would be a great opportunity to step in, because we expect dads to be about sports and we expect them to be about other things, but there are things that you can do with your child. Doing hair is actually really fun and interactive.
I decided to take this class just so I could be better at doing her hair, not hurting her, pulling her hair out, and learning how to braid.
Well, I think that's the challenge. People don't want you to practice on them. It's like they want you to have it right. So classes like this give me a chance to figure it out.
I hold the brush right here at the base because it makes it easier and you're not yanking.
Before I took the class, I was the king of the ponytail. So just, brush it all the way back. Try your best to squeeze it and put the rubber band around it. I still haven't figured out the braiding though.
A lot of them come out a little bit like the Pippi Longstocking. Sticking straight out of the head instead of actually laying down.
I feel like it seems easy, grabbing two strands and twisting them tight. Last time I tried, I failed, so I ended up going back to the ponytail. So it's like, all right, I gotta master this thing.
So this is also a trend that's becoming more and more popular. You've got dads on YouTube learning how to do their daughter's hair. You've got dads teaching other dads how to do their daughter's hair. Now you've got this former NFL player named Matthew Cherry. He's written a book called Hair Love, highlights all of it. Why do you think this particular story resonates with so many people?
I just thought, the father-daughter dynamic was so unique. Just this combination of like all these viral videos of black fathers doing their daughter's hair. These videos were going viral because people weren't used to seeing these images. They thought it was like an anomaly. And so with this, I just want to make sure that hopefully just normalize it. And right now, I think in 2019, the gender norms are going away.
What do you want people to take away from the book?
I think there's a big stereotype that African American men aren't involved in their kids' lives. And so just trying to normalize and show that, we definitely, not only are we a part of our kids' lives, like we'll do things that you probably didn't think that we would do, like doing hair and, things you do because you want to show your daughter that she's the most important thing in your world. And so I think that really is the messaging behind it.
But for those dads back in Ohio, it's the daily practice, the small moments with their girls that they treasure.
I wouldn't change it for the world, whether I'm messing up or it looks great, Every moment that I get with my daughter that's all that matters.
Being a father, it's about being present. It's important that they feel that love and that they feel that care and protection as a father. And I think things like being able to do their hair are just pluses. It shows that, hey, I want them to feel and look beautiful. Ability to bond with your daughters like this is something that is irreplaceable.
Now, with that being said, guys, as I said, I like showing videos like that just because Number one, I always feel like there needs to be positive role models, especially fathers, especially black fathers, of which there are many. I sound like a rap song right now. There are many examples out there, but I love the simple fact of the matter is, it's one of those things that are just not really talked about that I want to point out, that a black father, you're going to have to learn how to do hair. I know that if I ever want to become a future parent and I have of course, with a son, I'm going to probably encourage him to get locks, probably better than mine. Grow locks, probably better than mine. But if I have a daughter and she doesn't want to do locks, or if she wants to do natural, I'll have to learn how to do it. Not saying have to as far as just saying it's got to be done, but like they were saying, it's a bond that you have there. And let's be honest, even with the late Kobe Bryant, the simple fact of the matter is, trying to usher in this. I didn't want to say that his untimely passing has actually may have had an impact, but it's had an impact as far as having dads actually come forward and say, yeah, I don't mind being a girl dad, or being more on hands with my children, especially my daughters, and being that positive role model of male influence that they need. Because as Chris Rock once said, my whole entire objective with my daughter is to keep her off the pole. So if you get that joke. But I just want to show something positive, and I just thought that was really cool. Much like this guy right here, 90 years old and still doing something that I honestly think is pretty cool for the community.
Abbiamo cominciato con 10 panini, poi sono arrivati 30, 40, 50 e via, e ora siamo dopo tanti anni ad avere perché a un certo punto qualcuno di loro mi chiede: ma ora che viene l'inverno solo i panini non ci scattano, potete farci un piatto caldo? Allora è venuta questa idea qua di trovare una cucina dove cucinare anche un primo piatto.
And that's cool. I can't knock a guy at 90 years old, still gets out, collects food that just wasn't used, or overabundance of food, makes soup, salad, and sandwiches and desserts, and gives them out. You can't knock people like that literally want to devote their lives to a cause. I mean, that in my mind is legendary. But again, guy salute that guy. Even at 90 years old, he still makes a difference. So not to sound like a cheesy Knight Rider show, but one man can make a difference, especially if you have a Trans Am that talks and goes 300 miles an hour. But anyway, that's going to be the end of our show, guys. Thank you all for watching. I cannot stress this enough. And I do ever so mean this from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for watching this show, for liking it, for sharing it, for showing other people who may not know about it. It really does give me life. I do like to talk. At the same time, I like to talk about news and things that affect us, and really talk about the news that Fox, MSNBC, they may or may not show, or really say the things that need to be said. But love the fact that you guys are doing that. I want you to keep doing that. And like I said, for me, it's all about making sure that you guys get not only informative, but also to be encouraged to look for it yourself. So if you like what I did on the show, please let me know. If you didn't like it, please let me know. I take equal criticism both ways. But before I do get out of here, there is some shameless plugging I need to get out the way of first. I'll start with the man behind me who will tell you about To Be Determined and what to expect today. So, hey, Couch Guy.
Yo, what up?
So, do you want to tell everybody about To Be Determined?
Yeah, so it's about a former fluffy dude who kind of sort of got into shape and got a little something going on, a little razzle-dazzle. People want to listen to him, people want to say something. So it's all about a fitness-based podcast about chasing your own personal zenith. And today's podcast topic is going to be the importance of proper form. Because I'm tired of seeing improper form. That can lead to injury. That can lead.
I
Not
know.
only can it lead
I
to
know where this.
injury,
I know where this subject's going from.
but
Go
it
ahead.
can also make it to where, like, if you think you're working a certain muscle, you cannot be working it at all because you're doing it improperly. So I'm going to talk about the focus point on that, how important that is, and check me out a little bit later on this afternoon between 3 and 5. Everything's to be determined by you.
I do know it's coming about proper form. I know where it's coming from.
From last night, goddammit.
Yeah,
Oh
I figured you was going to talk about that.
Shit.
But like you said, yes.
Dude, what is you doing?
And also another brother from Illinois will be joining us today. A.Witherspoon, Big BZA on Facebook, BBZA podcast on YouTube, who will be here today. I'm not sure if he's doing a rhythmness or random as fuck. He'll probably be letting us know very shortly as he'll be here. But he actually has a couple of podcasts of his own. The first one is called the VSTs, which is basically a news podcast. That news could be video games. That news could be music. That news could be trailers. But interactive show just like mine. He also has Rhythm Nest, where you can run us over the rhythm, in which he did one here last week. And if you ever notice, we all have different taste across the musical spectrum, but that's what it's all about. Having differences and variations actually leads to conversations, and that's what we talk about because we're all fans and lovers of music. He also has Random as Fuck with Uncle Beezy. What's Random as Fuck? Random as Fuck is a pool of ratchets that we sometimes dip our toes into to take a break from life and have a chuckle. Some videos make you think, some videos make you cry, some videos even get turned to trap beats. Like the Kingpin trap beat, which I'm gonna need Vaughn to start doing on Random as Fuck because whoever did that beat to that old guy is a genius.
Like, you really don't have to do it.
Everybody knows I'm a Kingpin. I got 4 or 5 wives, 5 or 6 girlfriends. Everybody, whoever did that is a genius. That's all I'm saying. But again, all of his shows can be found under his Facebook page at BigBZA. Or also under his YouTube page at BigBZA.podcast. You'll be able to like, share, subscribe from there. Our other friend, brother from another mother, who is always remembered, Trace Brown, King Eddie Wayne on Facebook, DJ King Eddie Wayne on YouTube, has a couple podcasts of his own. The first one's called The Bump Down, which is music, culture, knowledge, and numbers, in which he goes over music, over chart work, over album sales, what's hot and what's not, and upcoming artists you need to watch out for. And if you are an artist that wants your music to be played, whether on Trace's Bump Down or Vaughn's Rhythmness, please reach out to Trace or Vaughn via Facebook, and they'll give you the details on upload your music. The only thing we ask that you do, bring your fire, because you never know who actually might be listening. Because let's also be honest, Cardi B came off a reality show. Chance the Rapper came off a mixtape. Lupe Fiasco came off a freestyle. Please do not knock the importance of anybody not listening to these podcasts, because the one song that might be fire may actually get you up on the charts. Don't believe me? Ask Nicki Minaj, because when the actual Ghost Rise ran out, that's what she did. Anyway, but again, bring your fire because you only get one shot and you never know who's listening. Also, with Trace Bump Down, this leads to the Smoke of Truth. As I said before, Trace is a very unorthodox but a highly intelligent brother who brings a unique perspective to a lot of subjects that I think can be beneficial for those who are willing to hear it. And if you're willing to talk with him, then god dang it, he's willing to talk with you, because Trace always wants all the smoke. So, with those shows can be found under his Facebook page at King Eddie Wayne, and also under his YouTube page at DJ King Eddie Wayne as well. As for myself, of course, How the Frack We Got Here is every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon. Of course, a bit later today, will be the Offense Podcast, the podcast that goes there, in which we're going to talk about, I'm just going to go ahead and say the subject now, why can't they let a Negro rest in peace? I'm gonna let y'all figure out where I'm going with that. Okay. But it is the podcast that goes there, and I hopefully will have, of course, the Mountain Puncher behind me and Ball White beside me, as we'll talk about it. And also a little bit later after that, guys, we're going to have a time change. That's right, we're going to make podcast Saturdays the actual hit place to be, because later that night will be Get Bit, our Blurred podcast. For all you blurs out there who don't know what a blurred is a black person, a nerd equals blurred. We are going to talk about anime. We talk about anime. We talk about sci-fi. We talk about Comic-Con. We talk about cosplays. We talk about really anything of the actual sci-fi geek world. Because as there are many, many other podcasts out there who do the same things, there are very few of them that come from a blurred perspective, and that's what we come into, because Thomas has a theory that he can't wait to talk about a little bit later tonight, which will probably be within the 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock hour. But again, look it up on Get Bit, which all of my shows can be found on my Facebook page at William Buchanan. I have been told it's too easy to find me. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Or you can go on my YouTube pages. You can go on you can look up How the Frack We Got Here, Awfulness Podcast, and Get Bit. That is GITBIT. All those have their own YouTube shows, so you can definitely like, share, and subscribe and things of that nature from there. Also, last but definitely not least, as he'll probably be doing some gaming streams today, Wingnut Gaming on Facebook. Who is Wingnut?
Live.
He just went live, and he's live now. My buddy Wingnut Gaming is a guy that likes to stream, but he likes to stream first-person shooters. He loves Battlefield. He loves Apex Legends. He loves Call of Duty. He loves Borderlands. He loves Fortnite. I don't know why. He even likes playing World of Warcraft and Monster Hunter, which, again, I know I'm late to the party, but I can't wait to play it as well. But he's a guy that is social and loves to meet new people and loves to play with them, because I've played with him for a time or two on Apex Legends and on Battlefield. But again, he is also funny as shit. So again, if you're on Facebook, look up Wingnut Gaming, like, share, subscribe, and tell him that I told you to call him a powdered donut. He'll get the reference. Aside from that, guys, last thing I'm saying about How the Frack We Got Here is this is all about basically staying informed. What does staying informed mean? It means that you are not accepting everything at face value. You are going beyond that, looking into what's there, finding the truth, and being able to show someone else what you found, encouraging them to do the same, and therefore being informed, because you really don't need to be told what to think. You only should be allowed to be able to investigate the facts or be presented with all the facts and make up the mind for yourself. As I've always said before, an informed community can make a lot better decisions than an uninformed one, because an uninformed one got us Trump, and that's how the frack we got here. So with that being said, guys, I've been Will, that's been Thomas. We hope to see you guys a little bit later on our other various podcasts, but thank you for watching. Feel free if you're watching this on the playback to go ahead and comment if it's live. I know you Trump supporters will. Aside from that, guys, have a wonderful weekend. Hopefully you're good and dry, and if not, please stay safe, because Mother Nature is not playing around. Peace.